Welcome to the Sales Lab. Is there anything that people tend to get wrong when they're trying to do technical sales?
It's interesting. A very legacy way of selling was to lead with functionality. So if I even look at my company 10 years ago, I've been here 11 years. If I look at my company 10 years ago, feature function, nobody could touch us. And so we could absolutely, and we were often instructed to walk into a meeting, show all the amazing things that we can do, boom, we're good, and it's time to go. And there are still a lot of places that you will see people that believe the demo is going to be your selling point. I believe that you should have basically closed the deal before you ever get to a demo. You should understand and know what's going on in their organization and know their priorities so well and so deeply and understand specifically how your solution is going to fit it, that the demo is like a cherry on top versus the selling, the real selling motion. And so that's one thing that stands out to me. We're seeing a shift away from the demo first, but there's certainly still some sales leaders out there that do that. That's absolutely there. There's also an old school philosophy of I'm going to wait for customers to come to me, especially in customer-based selling. I'm going to wait for my customers to come to me, and I'm just going to be a support rep. And as long as I'm taking care of them, eventually they will buy from me. And there is some truth to that, but we have to be consultants in the selling world, is my opinion. And so customer-based sellers should be just as good at prospecting as net new sellers. That's often, I get a lot of leaders argue with me about that one. That's my personal opinion. You have to be just as good at prospecting. Those are two things that stand out to me right now.
Well, and I mean, in one case, I think we could use phrases like a pitchman or like this happens. This is probably a valuable skill set in certain situations, but it's a little different from a consultative, 100%. Technical salesperson. And then, of course, the issue of waiting for your phone to ring, so to speak, is always a funny one because a website can do that job.
Yeah.
You want to stay employed, you better be bringing something else to the table. And in fact, let alone stay employed, you want to be making what salespeople sometimes like to make.
You got to bring
something that a website can't do, that a pitchman can't do, that a well-produced video of one person giving the pitch. How replaceable are you?
Right.
Hopefully you're digging a little deeper than that.
Yeah, 100%.
You mentioned. Basically, you want to have the sale closed before you even bring up the product. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, to clarify, by no means, it's not like we've already put a contract in front of them or anything of that nature. But I want to make sure I've identified that pain, whatever that pain is to the customer, and that's going to be so different on each customer. And so, one mistake, candidly, people that do this for a long time start assuming pain. I've seen this over and over and over again, and so I assume that your pain is X. You got to get away from that. You have to know that customer specific pain and specifically understand what the impact of that is to the business, right? And so if the impact of the business is, I talked to somebody the other day that the HR person said, well, I'm having to work insane number of hours. And then my rep called their CFO thinking that's game changer. They're having to work, extra 15 hours a week of overtime or whatever it was. And the CFO responded with, I don't care. That's why I pay her overtime. And so there is that element of, you got to know their pain and know who cares about the pain. And essentially, how do you measure that, right? Is this something that is lawsuits to the company? Is this something that is, they're not able to meet their 2030 strategic vision because they're not able to allocate resources? Like, what is that impact? And already know what are going to be the reasons they make a decision, right? What are the most critical, you often hear it called decision criteria. Understand what that criteria is, who's making the decision. Do you have somebody internal that is championing you and your software? If you know all of those things before you go into a demonstration, you're already 90% of the way there, because then your demo can be, boom, I hit that big issue. Boom, I hit that big issue. And that becomes like a aha, wow moment that just kind of solidifies everything. I have a personal philosophy, and my data supports this. If we get to more than 2 demos in a deal, in the mid-market space, not true of enterprise, but in our mid-market space, if there's more than 2 demos required in the deal, our win rate plummets significantly. Because if we're having to do more than 2 demos, then what's happening is we don't understand what's important to them. And so every demo becomes I'm showing you and I'm hoping it sticks. And so that's what I mean by having it won before the deal is I am so confident that I know everything that's of value to them, and I'm going to nail this demo so that immediately after this demo, there's nothing to do but start working towards contract signature. And that just expedites everything as it relates to the process.